JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, Atlanta, August 6, 1990, Boulder, December 26, 1996, was a 6-year-old American child and mini-miss who was murdered under suspicious circumstances at her family's home in Boulder, Colorado on December 26, 1996. Biography. Born in August 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia, her name was a combination of the names of her parents, John and Patricia, who died in 2006. She became known for being a little beauty queen, as her mother had entered her in several children's beauty contests. Her father was a millionaire businessman, and her own mother had also participated in beauty contests, having been Miss West Virginia 1977. She had an older brother, Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of the crime. The case of JonBenét's death on the morning of December 26, 1996. A ransom note was found in JonBenét's house, and her mother called the police. That afternoon, however, her father found the girl's body in the basement of their home. Family member, according to People, on the night JonBenét was killed, the people who were at the Ramsey house were the girl's parents, John and Patricia, and her older brother, Burke, who was only 9 years old. It was Patricia who found, on the fateful morning of December 26, 1996, a ransom note on a pad of paper demanding $118,000. Interestingly, the same amount that John had recently received in bonuses, in exchange for JonBenét. However, later that same day, the girl's father found her dead in the basement. In the years that followed, John and Patricia refused to testify to the police and hired criminal lawyers to take on the case, which the authorities considered suspects. It wasn't until 2008, 2 years after Patricia's death from ovarian cancer, that the district attorney at the time found the family not guilty. However, the next prosecutor, Stan Garnett, didn't feel that the exoneration was warranted based on the state of the evidence and the complexity of the case, he told People. It's also worth mentioning that Burke, although never considered a suspect by the police, was described in a 2016 CBS documentary series as possibly responsible for hitting his sister in the head with a flashlight. Calling the production a heinous television attack, the attorney said at the time that he would file a lawsuit against the network. Intruder? The fact that there was a ransom note at the crime scene actually gave more credibility to the hypothesis that an intruder was responsible for JonBenét's murder. One potential suspect was a man named Michael Helgoth, who lived in the area and had a pair of boots that seemed to match a footprint found at the crime scene. Helgoth was wanted by police, but in 1997 he took his own life, and authorities removed him from the list of suspects. Still, a private investigator hired by the Ramseys, Ollie Gray, believed that Helgoth's family had a taped confession to the crime, an unconfirmed claim. However, in 2006, 10 years after the crime, a man named John Mark Carr, who later adopted the name Delia Alexis Reich after coming out as a trans woman, got attention from the American media when he publicly confessed to being responsible for the murder. "I was with JonBenét when she died," he said at the time. "Her death was an accident." However, investigators dismissed the confession as false, since Reich's ex-wife told police that they were in Alabama on Christmas Day 1996. Not to mention that no DNA samples found at the crime scene were linked to Carr. A third potential intruder was a man who worked as a Santa Claus, whose daughter had been kidnapped decades earlier, and who visited the Ramseys days before the crime. However, police never formally considered him a suspect, and the investigation never led to him in any way. In 2021, John, who is now 3, told People that he still hoped that with new DNA investigation technologies, his daughter's death could finally be solved. "I just want him identified. I want to know why. Why did he do this?" he said. The sentence, JonBenét had been hit in the head and strangled. A garrote was found tied around her neck. The autopsy report also noted abrasion and vascular congestion of the vaginal mucosa. The official cause of death, as reported by the autopsy, was asphyxia due to strangulation, combined with traumatic brain injury. The case gained national notoriety and drew widespread public and media attention, in part because her mother, Patsy Ramsey, had entered JonBenét in a series of child beauty pageants. In late 1998, Boulder County District Attorney Alex Hunter presented the case to a jury of 8 women and 4 men. The jurors were among the few people who had seen all of the evidence presented by prosecutors in the case against John and Patsy Ramsey. The jury recommended charges against John and Patsy Ramsey, indicating that the jurors believed that the parents placed JonBenét in a situation that resulted in her death. But the prosecutor overruled the recommendations, saying that he and his prosecution task force believed that there was insufficient evidence to justify bringing charges against anyone who had been investigated to that point. The case is full of strange facts, such as a note with a ransom demand for exactly the same amount as the money won by the girl's father, a clue that triggered a search that involved not only the family, but also the community where the family lived. People who entered the house in search of other clues ended up contaminating the crime scene, making it difficult to search not only for the girl, but also for the criminal. The ransom note was written on paper from a notebook belonging to the family, which is strange, since a kidnapper would not have time to leave a 3-page message while abducting his victim. When the girl's father found her, he moved her body, further hindering the investigators' work. These and other inconsistent actions ended up turning the crime involving the girl's death into a true legend, wrote Monet magazine in 2019. Update. 12 years later, in July 2008, 12 years after the girl's death and 2 after the death of her mother, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey made it clear that the parents had definitely not related to the case, since DNA samples collected from JonBenét's clothes and fingernails belonged to an unidentified man. The results of the tests had been obtained using analysis techniques that had not existed years before and pointed to a male of Hispanic origin. In October 2010, the Colorado police reopened the case. What is absolutely correct is to say that they are not going to let this case go to waste, Denver prosecutor and legal analyst Scott Robinson told the press. In October 2016, new DNA tests, using even more sophisticated techniques, revealed that the DNA found contained marks of 2 unknown people, never identified through the government database. In January 2019, Michael Vale took to the police a letter written by a friend, Gary Oliva, in which the latter confessed to the crime. In the letter, Gary wrote, "I have never loved anyone like I loved JonBenét. I let her sleep and her head hit me, and I watched her die. It was an accident. Please believe me. She was not like other children." Michael had Gary as a suspect because on the day of the murder, he had received a call from his friend sobbing and saying that he had hurt a little girl. In 2019, Gary was serving a 10-year prison sentence for possession of child pornography and other photos of children, which included images from JonBenét's autopsy. He had previously been investigated as a suspect in 2002, Ariana Grande and her bad joke. In July 2019, singer Ariana Grande was harshly criticized by fans due to a bad joke she made about the case. A friend of the singer had posted on her Instagram an image of a magazine cover with JonBenét, and the singer commented on the post, "I can't wait for this to be your Halloween look." After the post and comment were deleted and the negative repercussion, Ariana used Twitter to apologize. "It was very inappropriate and I sincerely apologize. Suspects in total. The case file on the child's death had more than 50,000 pages, 140 people investigated, and 1,400 pieces of evidence analyzed. However, the identity of the killer was not discovered. Among the suspects, the investigation pointed to two men who confessed to having committed the crime. Among these suspects, there are some that stand out. One of the men was considered a suspect because he had a pair of boots that matched the print found at the crime scene. His name came to light because of a private investigator who said he had a recorded confession. However, his DNA did not match what was found in the basement, and he killed himself in 1997. Another suspect's name was raised by the child's father. He was a teacher and dressed up as Santa Claus in the city. He was never charged with any crime and died in 2022 after suffering a heart attack. Another suspect was a criminal who lived in the city at the time. He told a prosecutor that he would be the killer, and a friend said that he had become distraught and said that he had hurt a girl. In addition, this man was seen at the scene of the beauty queen's death a year after the crime. He said that he would admit to the crime if he could have a roof over his head and 3 meals a day, but his DNA did not match that found on the victim. One of the suspects was a photographer who captured several moments of JonBenét's short life. He insisted that he did not kill the child. Another suspect was a man who had a shrine to JonBenét at home. However, he had a solid alibi for the night of the crime. A man was also listed as a suspect because he communicated with a reporter using a false name and claimed the crime was accidental. He knew details of the crime that had not been publicly revealed, but he never confessed to the crime. He was arrested for the crime, but his DNA was not found at the crime scene, and the charges were dropped. Media coverage on December 14, 2016. The television channel Investigation Discovery ID premiered in Brazil the documentary Who Killed JonBenét. In April 2017, Netflix released a special about the case, casting JonBenét Ramsey, Joe Berlinger, director of the documentary series Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey. Zrenia defended the family's innocence. In an interview with the New York Post, Berlinger expressed his conviction that the Ramseys are innocent and suggested that the case could be solved if the Boulder police conduct new investigations and re-evaluate all suspects, including those ruled out in the 1990s. He also proposed new DNA tests, including on the family. Regarding JonBenét's father, Berlinger stated that John Ramsey, now 80 years old, collaborated with the documentary voluntarily and without demands, highlighting his desire to see the case closed. John Ramsey agreed to sit down with us. He did not ask for any compensation. He was never paid. We do not pay our sources, and he did not ask for any editorial involvement. No questions were ruled out. To me, this is an 80-year-old guy who wants the case solved. It is just unimaginable that the family would have any involvement in all of this, he highlighted to the newspaper. In 2024, police in the U.S. state of Colorado have revealed that they are optimistic about solving the mysterious case of the murder of child model and beauty queen JonBenét Ramsey. According to two sources in the investigation, which has been dragging on for almost 26 years, the case is close to being solved and will happen in 2025. I'm not sure what it will take to completely unmask it, one investigator told the New York Post. But it seems like it's within our reach. We're hoping for 2025. That's going to be our year, he promised. The case had been stagnant until last year, when the former police chief of the city of Boulder convened a task force to reopen the investigation. It wasn't as aggressive as everyone expected, the investigator said. But now there's a lot of pressure to solve it, he admitted. Another police source points out that the new Boulder police chief, Steve Redfern, who took office in early 2024, has brought intensity to the work. He wants it solved and off the books, and he is dedicating officers and resources to solving this murder, which has been a dark stain on the police department, he said. We botched the case from the beginning, and now with new blood, we can finally fix it, he said. On Tuesday, one day after the release of the documentary Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, the Boulder Police Department released its annual progress report on the investigation. JonBenét's murder was an unspeakable crime, and this tragedy has never left our hearts, the police chief said. We are committed to following up on every lead and will continue to work with DNA experts and our law enforcement partners across the country until this tragic case is solved. This investigation will always be a priority for the Boulder Police Department, he concluded. The murder is one of the most famous in American criminal history and has been a mystery since December 26, 1996, when the little beauty queen's disappearance was reported. Hours later, her father, John Ramsey, found the girl's body in the basement of the house. She had a garrote around her neck, and her skull had been crushed by an apparent blow to the back of the head. Initially, the police believed that some member of the family was involved: Father John, Mother Patsy, and Brother Burke. However, DNA tests ruled out this possibility, and the trio were completely excluded from the list of suspects in 2008.